Good luck. We're going to miss you, especially all the
Well, we're going to have a lot of people here, about 200 plus. So that was one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of tables for sitting. We were hoping you would be mingling around. The remarks and comments section or portion of the reception will start probably within the next 30 minutes. And we'll get through that. Meanwhile, you might have a question as why you see all these stacks of chairs around. Because you don't have tables to sit at. When I announce the fact that we're having the comment and presentation time, feel free if you want to take a chair and set it where you want. Okay? So that you can sit back and relax. If you want to stand, please do so. But that's what I think too. Kind of important announcement here is I want to advise everyone that since learning of Don and Chris's impending departure, we've established a purse, quote unquote, fund to help them on their way. Donations have been coming in since late August, but we've allowed time and space for those folks who haven't had that opportunity yet to do so. If you'll look here, to my right, right behind Al, we provided a suitcase, an old suitcase that you can walk over, backdrop by a couple of lovely scenes from Old Jerusalem, and of course the Episcopalian seal. Feel free, if you have not had that opportunity yet, to provide your donations to provide for Don and Chris as they depart. While Father Bender's 17 years of leadership for the church here is pretty cool, I think most of us know his relationship goes back to the 70s. Early 70s, late 60s, early 70s?
70s, yeah, 74.
When I was a visiting Boy Scout. 50s. He received communion from the then rector, Albert Jones. In the early 80s, he returned again, but this time as a seminarian, where he mentored with Reverend Jones' successor, Reverend William Brake Jr. During this time, Don was instrumental in forming the Pohick Pickers, a folk ensemble band that still performs today at many of our church events, as you know, including our annual country fair. After ministering in parishes in Miami and Dallas, the vestry Pohick called him back as rector in 2001. I think I speak for everybody. I've only been here a short time, but I'm going to take that chance. And that we're grateful for Father Bender and what he has done for this church and this community. Among many things, and you'll see this here, you've seen a lot of the things he's done. With others in the parish, he helped invigorate our country fair, developed greater participation in the apple butter time, and most notable to me as a newcomer, and having spoken to a lot of folks about this, was during the very troubling time of the Episcopalian Church, Don, with his steadfast, resolute attitude and belief, held this church together. And we are together and unbroken because of a lot of what Don has done. And I think I didn't experience, but I appreciate it, and I think everyone would appreciate the fact that he was able to accomplish that. And now, as Chris and Don depart, we're very excited for the course he and Chris are now on as they embark to a whole new world and new challenges. We reluctantly give him back to the larger world, but we'll cherish the fond memories we have from the 17 plus years of his leadership at Pohick. A little bit of Pohick trivia. Father Bender's 17 plus years as rector of Pohick Church places him, I don't know if you know this, places him third in tenure of all the rectors we've had at Pohick since its inception. Only 2 people surpass him as rector in tenure. One is Reverend Charles Green from 1737 to 1765, which is 28 years. You guys knew Charlie, right? And then Albert Jones, the individual who Don first took communion from 1956 to 1982, 26 years. That's pretty amazing to be able to come here as a Boy Scout and take communion with the person who's, did 26 years here. It's amazing. The stories Don can tell, I'm sure, and we're going to hear some of those. But first, we're going to hear a few stories and get a few presentations from some folks who wanted to do this.
So I've known Don and Chris for a long time. I have fond memories of them both when Don was here as our seminarian back in the 80s. He was certainly one of our long line of exceptional seminarians, one of those who you just know are going to have long, prosperous careers, meaningful careers, productive ministries in the years to come. Now, I wasn't here when Don visited as a Boy Scout, but there are a number of people here today who were here then. I'm not going to name names, but you know who you were. I was on the vestry that called Don back in the 80s, and I still remember the presentations by the search committee to the vestry. In particular, John Springer, who was a member of the committee and truly one of Pohick's finest of all time, closed his remarks by saying, "And Don even looks like Jesus." I'm not sure that had a whole lot to do with our accepting their recommendation to call Don, but that's the thing that sticks in my mind. Somehow I suspect that of all the characteristics and traits that the congregations of Jerusalem and the Middle East come to appreciate in Don, that one probably won't be very high on their list. So I have known Don for a long time. It's hard to believe it's been so long. And I've worked with him in many capacities and have had the opportunity to see firsthand his many strengths. I certainly don't have time to do them justice now, but I'd like to highlight just a couple of things that stand out for me. One of the most poignant events happened literally just days after he arrived here. The tragedies of 9/11 struck, and Don held a tremendously moving candlelight prayer service out in the courtyard. One that I'll never forget. On a happier note, Don has embraced the history of Pohick and worked hard to restore our relationships with Mount Vernon and Gunston Hall. Before Don, our previous rector, Bill Brake, had certainly not rejected the associations of our colonial forefathers with Pohick, but he tried to downplay them some. I remember Bill saying on more than one occasion, "This is not the Church of George Washington, capital C. This is the Church of Jesus Christ." I think Don has struck just the right balance in proclaiming our unique history and using it as a way to emphasize the importance of Christianity to our founding fathers. And at the same time, to introduce others to our very active and Christ-centered church today. Having served during Don's entire tenure with him on the board of the historic Pohick Church Foundation, and having seen his support for the founding of our very active Docents Guild, I'm truly convinced that Don's appreciation of and focus on our history has served Pohick extremely well. So thanks, Don, for your ministry here. Thanks for your wonderful sermons and your truly enlightening adult ed classes that you've led throughout your tenure, whether at Lenten dinners, at Shrinemont, Sunday mornings. They've really been appreciated. Thanks for increasing our visibility to the outside world and improving our internal communications with your excellent work on our website. Thanks for your focus on the things we have in common rather than the things that divide us, even during some very divisive times in the Episcopal Church. Thanks for your leadership and your friendship.
Hello, Don.
Chris?
You a little nervous about me being up here right now?
Not in the slightest, Chris. I've got more on you than you have on me.
This is the disadvantage of having one of your best friends ever also be your priest. But Don has been that to me personally, one of my best friends ever. I'm not going to say any more about that so I don't get too choked up at this. But he's also been just this key member of the Pohick Pickers. Now, when I joined the Pickers many, many years ago, Don was not here in those days. And John Sessoms, who was really the true leader of the Pohick Pickers, kind of plucked me out of nowhere and got me into the band. Then, of course, in 2001, when Don came along, I knew nothing about the history of the Pickers. I knew nothing about how Don and Barbara Lynn, Barbie, want to stand up and let everybody, this is our other original Pohick along with a couple of other people, formed the original Pohick Pickers, and then Don went off to pursue his career. Barbara Lynn, I think, went off to college and pursuing her, she got married, and a lot of other things happened. Time went on, John Sessoms showed up, reformed the Pickers, mostly to do church service music, but also to perform at a couple of out-of-church type events. Our annual party for the New Hope homeless shelter at Christmas time, the Pohick Country Fair and events like that. So I had been in the Pickers already for a few years when John came back as our rector in 2001. And that was the year that I was fair chairman. And I remember that wonderful service that John Pacehour talked about out here in the courtyard after the 9/11 events had occurred. And I was actually hoping that Don would cancel the fair to get me off the hook. And I remember mentioning that to Don, and he had the same expression you just had. What are you talking about? Of course we're going to have a Pohick fair. But because I was chairman, I didn't get to play with him that year. The following year, 2002, we did get to perform together. And I can remember after that fair, the very next morning, on the Monday morning following that, Don sent out an email to all the Pickers critiquing our performance. Typical Don Bender type stuff. And I can remember reading through it. And then, of course, all over the years, as things went along, I began to realize that, not only was Don a wonderful guitar player. In fact, my wife Carolyn will tell you many times over the years, as I strive to improve myself as a player, I often say, if I could just get to be as good as Don, but I can't quite get there. But not only was he a marvelous guitar player, an excellent singer, but he also was a huge Beatles fan. And not only a Beatles fan, but a Beatles aficionado, much like myself. My knowledge of the Beatles, the depth of my knowledge comes from having lived through it. Don, I think, did a lot of it on research, and he and I still go back and forth over emails, debating things. Oh, did John do this, or was that Paul? Did George play that? Didn't John play that part? And we kind of go back and forth on these things. We have a lot of fun with that. But when I realized that he was also a Beatles fan, I knew I had now found a brother in the band. So suddenly there's Beatles songs that we were playing. And then there were the Beatles songs that I wanted to play. And then there were the Beatles songs that Barb wanted to play. And more recently, there's been the Beatles songs that Carolyn wants to play. But rescuing us from going into becoming virtually a Beatles cover band, there was all this other music that Don also brought to the table. Don Denver songs I had never heard of before. And not just the famous ones like Country Roads and Grandma's Feather Bed and Rocky Mountain High, but also Christmas for Cowboys and Aspen Glow and things that we played during the Christmas season. Other wonderful music that he brought to the band that expanded our repertoire greatly. And that sort of sparked something within the Pickers where everybody suddenly began suggesting new music. And we sort of developed a tradition every year. Every member of the band introduces at least one or two new songs that we begin working into the repertoire. So the Pickers catalog, I think my personal collection is now up to about 5 binders wide of all these things that we have played over the years, going all the way back to 1987, from that very first Picker performance. So people say, how are you going to replace Don? And the answer really is, well, you're not. You don't replace somebody like that. You don't replace that kind of a performer. You don't replace a John Lennon or a Paul McCartney from the Beatles. You don't replace a Don Binder from the Pohick Pickers. What are we going to do? We're going to go along without him as best we can, is what we're going to do. But he has enriched us so much with the talent that he brought in and the inspiration he gave us. Every one of us, as a player, as a performer, and as a bandmate, are much improved. We are a much better band today than we were 17 years ago. Preparing for this fair was easy because, number one, we were playing a lot of stuff that we had played for years. So a lot of it is just there for us. So having had all that. But then over the years, Don helped become part of a coalescence that occurred within that band. Where now when we get together, we work really, really hard, but it's this absolute labor of love where everybody supports everybody else, everybody takes care of everybody else, and everybody protects everybody else in that band. And to have Don Binder in an email or personally refer to me as a bandmate is just one of the most wonderful things I think I've ever heard. And my wife and I talk about it all the time. We're bandmates together, and that's a very, very special relationship for all of us. But beyond all that, you know, you're going away, you go into this faraway place, and having been there with you, as have several other members of this congregation, when I heard that you were leaving to go to Israel, I completely understood why. It made perfect sense to me. That place calls to me as well. So I knew you, that because your exposure to it was so much more intense than mine, it was always that tug pulling on you back to that place. So for you to go there now, as sad as it is for us, we're very happy for you that you're going. You know we're going to miss you dearly. Anytime you want to come back and strap on a guitar and get up there with us, you know you're welcome. But we're not going to let you go without having a little bit of fun. So I need someone to help me. Carolyn, if you want to come up and hold this box for me. Because we bought you a couple things. We're not going to let you just go off to Israel empty-handed. Now, I didn't wrap this fancy.
I told him we had plenty of gift bags, but...
Well, first and foremost, and Don, you need to come up here as well, so we can present these things to you. And first is our first ever Pohick Pickers Lifetime Achievement Award. Little teacup for you. But then also, since you go into that faraway place, and I know you're doing a lot of walking in these remote regions, I know you got a great pair of walking shoes, but I thought he's going to need socks. So we got you a pair of walking socks for you to have on that journey. And I figured, you know, while you're there, there will be those Friday evenings when you and Chris get to sit out back, you know, behind your housing and maybe grill a couple of hamburgers or something, kosher hamburgers out there on the grill. So I wanted to make sure you did that. And then you might need something to pick the hamburgers up with, so we've got these guitar-shaped tongs for you. And then we thought about Chris. She's going to need something to help out with all that cooking we're going to be doing out there. So we got her this very special for her to have out there, so she can, you know, cut up the salads and all those olives that you'll be eating and things like that. But then on a more serious note, we didn't want to just send you away with just a bunch of fun gifts or a bunch of joke gifts. So knowing that a good guitar player, it should never be anywhere without a pick. So we've ordered you a silver-plated pick-shaped necklace for you to wear on a chain around your neck. So you'll always have a pick, but it's got a special inscription on it. It's inspired by you with your most recent song, I Look to My Friends. So it says, look to your friends, because we want you to know, my brother, you will always have friends here at Pohick. We appreciate you, we love you, and we will miss you.
Thank you, Chris. Let me first start just by saying that from all the vestry members, it's always a wild ride with Don at the helm. But there's always someone behind the guy that's doing all the hard work. And when you come from a family that you grow up in that's full of ministers and ministers' wives and young kids that are growing up inside of families that are like that. You get to see the same thing in the vendors. And so before I start beating up on Don right now, let's first just thank Chris, because he may be sometimes the quiet, silent type, but there is a strength behind Chris that I think we all know about, and the ladies especially know the strength that she has, and her kids know the strength that she has. But she is just one of those people that truly leads, and I know has helped Don through many, many things throughout their lives. And when they go to Jerusalem and they hit Israel, we know she's going to help Don relieve him of some of that pension as they travel through Tel Aviv and get to do all the shopping and all the other wonderful things that are there. No, Chris, thank you so much. You've been a blessing throughout this, and you welcomed all our families as well as your family. And we got to see you all grow up, and that's been wonderful for all of us. So for Don, for those who serve on the vestry, and those who have been senior wardens, there's always been the Friday afternoon. For me, it was wonderful because I got to take Friday afternoon off to go see Don. So hey, I got some time off to go see Don. The best part about it, though, is that you got to go see Don. And you got to go sit in, and you got to see inside of what it takes to manage this family. And I think we all know that Don's done a wonderful job of managing and leading this family. And yeah, Don, maybe you do look a little bit like Jesus Christ. I always thought Roger looked a lot more like Jesus Christ. But that said, you've shown us that love, and you've been part of that love. Beth had asked me, well, can you tell a couple of funny stories? Well, I'm sure I can think of a lot of funny things to say about Don. Let me just tell a couple of things, because Don's been extremely important to our family. And I'll start with the first one. And the first one is Don married our daughter, Caitlin. And if those of you that know Caitlin and John who have been here, they are challenged with disabilities, and they have persevered through those challenges. They haven't done that always on their own. Don's been there for them. James has been there for them. Ruth's been there for them. There have been others that have been there for them to help counsel them and talk to them when times get tough. But Don was there and stood up to the challenge and said, yeah, I'll marry him. And we had the wedding in Carolina. It was Carolina Beach, right here? Atlantic Beach. Well, and let's all pray for those folks, because they've had some tough times. But we were at this wonderful resort. And everything was getting set up, and the families were running around, and I have no idea where I was at, because I was just worried about my daughter and making sure she was happy and that this was all going to go well. And Caitlin and I are sequestered in a room, and we're just talking and having some fun and all that, oblivious to everything else that's going on. All of a sudden, we start hearing that there's this ruckus outside, and there's like this raging fire that's going on, and about ready to burn off this beautiful deck that's on this like multi-million-dollar complex. I'm just thinking of how much insurance is or what money it was going to cost us. But there was Don. Don took every one of the centerpieces, mason jar centerpieces that had water in them, and he's throwing it on the fire. So, needless to say, there weren't any centerpieces on the table. That was okay. But we were trying to figure out who started this fire. I think Don was so nervous he smoked a cigarette. Not really. The best part of this, though, was the firemen didn't show up to put the fire out. Don and a bunch of the groomsmen and everybody got the fire out. About
the wedding was done. We were all sitting in, waiting on speeches and first dances and all that. And all of a sudden, come these firemen walking in, do the whole thing, and all the ladies are standing up clapping. They thought they were amazing. So you can understand what Don's done for all our families in that day, and it was a very special day. And thank you, Don, for that, and our children. Thank you for that. Let me just finish by saying we all lose things. We all have to find things. Don's helped us find things throughout all our lives. Don helped me find keys one time right before a mission trip. And Don was really gracious. We had to unpack a van. In fact, Christine, you were there, and a few others were there, and Rusty was there, and we unpacked this whole van, and we found the keys that Stu lost, I admit it. But we found them. The great thing about that is I ended up being in Don's sermons for about the last 10 years. So what I tell everybody here is, if you lose something, you're going to find it, and hopefully you'll be blessed and you'll find it in one of Don's sermons someday. Because that is lasting. And his friendship and his love and what he's done for this parish will forever be remembered and will always be lasting. So Don, thank you. You've been a wonderful brother and a wonderful mentor, and I've enjoyed every minute of it, and we all have. So,
Don, it's been a privilege for me to serve with the staff at POIC during your tenure as rector here. Just imagine being a minister of music on a staff where the rector is a singer, a guitarist, a composer, a CD producer. Here, I've never worried that I would be told, as I was at the first church where I worked out of seminary, that there's really no reason why every member of the choir has to have a piece of music. Just never happened here, never. I'm here to tell you Don knows all the hymns in the hymnal. I mean, all of them, everyone. And his fine voice easily leads the congregation when it's necessary, and his fine musicianship helps him to step back and let others lead when he knows that they're there and ready to do it. He knows how to sight sing. He knows how to chant. He's accomplished as a musician as well as a preacher, liturgist, teacher, pastoral counselor, and administrator. As Chris has said, he's the founding member of the POIC Pickers, and he wrote a new song each year for the parish Shrinemont retreats, which he sang in place of the sermon at our final Eucharist each year. All these songs, which are about living the Christian life, are available on a beautifully produced EP and CD that's in Golden Dome, so just go and take a look. He supported the expansion of the music program here, and he was always available to help me with pastoral and management quandaries as they arose. He also knew how a suggestion by the Minister of Music would impact the rest of the program here, and he could tell me immediately. He knew the calendar just about by heart. He thought about the use of the buildings, about the groups affected, be they ushers or altar guild or brotherhood or COH or Sunday school or the youth or the cemetery or the guilds, you name it. He could just do that right off the top of his head. Not only has he participated as a musician in the Sounds of POIC concerts over the years, but he has greatly assisted with our long efforts to produce a CD of them, a DVD of them, and he's given us advice, he's helped us to understand equipment, and he's spent many hours in post-production. Most recently, he supported the organ project, and he's helped to see it close to completion, and I'm here to tell you now, unlike what I wrote in the most recent POIC Post, that it's all done with the exception of the installation of the light, the music light. So, hallelujah. And thanks to all of you who contributed. Thank you very much. So in the past, I've worked with a rector who was known as a healer. I've worked with one who is known for upholding the dignity of the position no matter what. I've worked with one whose dazzling preaching style hid the fact that he rarely had much to say. You get the idea, right? But I've never worked with somebody who is as well balanced as Don. He knows the liturgy inside out, He also knows the Potomac Church buildings inside out. He'll climb up to the roof and see what's going on, right? He knows Poac's history thoroughly, and he's also got dreams for its future. He's a man of integrity, a strong family man, a man of daily personal prayer and Bible study. As a supervisor, he wants us to do our work and report about it to him, but he doesn't micromanage. He does have a quality, though, which in polite company I call a no baloney meter. If you make a mistake, you still want to present yourself in the best possible light to your supervisor, right? Well, not in this case, you can't do that. You get this immediate frown and he seems to be thinking, do you think I'm a fool? In case you think the rector's job is only 40 hours a week, I'm here to tell you differently. 3 years ago, my computer crashed utterly and apparently irredeemably. The data was all lost. It was just all lost. When I told him about it, he got the look of a man who, even though he regularly checks the weather forecast, now sees a tornado bearing down on him. But he found a program to rescue the computer data and ran it nonstop for 48 hours until I had everything back, which to me was a miracle, and I'm very grateful to this day. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to know Chris and their children as well. I had the opportunity to give Mary piano lessons and got to see her excellent musicianship blossom as she practiced and learned. And I attribute her consistent practice and progress to Chris's abilities as a teacher and as a mother. We on the staff and all the music program volunteers wish you and Chris all the best in this new ministry. In addition to being a great opportunity for ministry, we hope that it's a great adventure. We know God will be with you, and we know we here will be praying for you and for the fulfillment of your call.
We want to wish Don and Chris the very best on their journey. You know you're going to be missed here tremendously. But for the moment, we'd like for Chris to come up because we have something for him. Several years ago, I'm not sure exactly how long, but Chris received a Bible that was very special to her from Michelle Booth and Nicole Fluid. And as we all know Chris, that Bible was very well used. And it turns out that it needed to be rebound before she made her journey. So together with Christian Ed and the women of the church, we took it and had it rebound for her. Something you'll always remember us with, I hope.
I just quickly want to say that Chris has, through the years, done wonderful Bible studies with the women of the church, which I have greatly appreciated. It has been a wonderful thing she's done. She also, many of you all may not be aware of, helped start Godly Play here at the church. And this has been a curriculum that we still use for the preschoolers through the 4th grade. It has been a wonderful addition to our curriculum here at POHIC. We used to use the Episcopal Children's curriculum, and I can't say how it is a great addition to have changed to the Godly Play curriculum. And Chris helped make the stories with me and with a wonderful person, Nicole Fluid, who no longer is here. Her husband has got a job in Maryland, and that's where they now reside, as far as I know. And we were trained together in Godly Play and have many wonderful memories of it. And I will always treasure the times that we spent making the different manipulatives and the stories, and the time we spent being trained together, and have wonderful memories of it. And thank you, Chris, so much.
I want to thank all that helped. A number of you provided me names, addresses, some of you reached out to others and let them know that this was going on. And Susan Hayward Costa was a huge help as far as keeping track of who's coming and helping me with a lot of different pieces of that. So I thank you all, and I'm so glad you're here. And I also thank all of you who provided memories. I know some of you may have already given Don memories personally, but I thank those of you who submitted them. I read them, and I'm telling you, Don, you're going to enjoy the book. You and Chris have no idea. It will be, it'll be something you'll treasure, I think. Yeah, I enjoy it. And I also thank Fuzzy. Fuzzy collected the pictures and put them on the screen, and he did a great job of that, because there are thousands of pictures. You have no idea which one would be the best. So he was able to make the call, and it's well worth the time to come up and look at it. So we have something for you, Don. This is for you, Chris. It should, yeah. Take it out, and I will give you the thumbs up. You get it?
A lot of pretty paper.
So it's like the memories that you collected?
Yes.
Been typed up
Yes.
and pictures. So this is like our time here together with you all and all that you've had to say to us.
You'll love it.
I'm here on behalf of the Mount Vernon Ladies Association, which of course, through the many years that Don has been here, the relationship between Mount Vernon and POIC has gotten very close. We have a lot of items owned by POIC at Mount Vernon that we help teach the story of religion in the founding era and the story of George Washington's religiosity and relationship with POIC Church. We have, through Don's great work, we'll be at the new library. We'll be hosting some of the most special books as well there. And continue to be able to teach that story. On a personal note, of course, my wife Nadine and I have been members of the congregation here for about 4 years now, and our two boys went through confirmation recently, and I'm so delighted they were able to do that before you left, Don, because you had a major impact on their faith and their life, and I really appreciate you for that. When I first heard about this extraordinary opportunity for you to go to Jerusalem, I knew that you'd have to learn a lot more history because it's a lot older than the United States of America. But I came to mind a quote that George Washington wrote to someone about success, and it comes from one of his favorite plays from Cato, and Washington would use this regularly, actually. And he would say, "'Tis not in mortals to command success, but you've done better, you've deserved it." In this case, I think that applies to you. Now, that person he wrote to was Benedict Arnold, so that was when he was, on the right side of things. Yes. But I have a gift that I'd like to give you on behalf of the Mount Vernon Ladies Association. I guess you all know that the ladies often come here when they're here for council, the full board, and they'll be here in October as well. So they'll get to see Lynn, and that'll be a lot of fun. And of course, Don also goes to Mount Vernon and ministers to them on occasion as well, in the piazza and in other places. And I have this extraordinary plaque for you, which is made out of black walnut that we use in the mansion house at Mount Vernon. And the cross here in the middle is from the pecan tree that was beside the house for the many years you were here. You remember the great pecan. And I just want to read on the back for everybody, if I can figure this out. This plaque was made on George Washington's estate by Mount Vernon's craftsmen from walnut wood used in the mansion. The cross inlay comes from the pecan tree planted near the mansion about 1848. And then there's a little inscription here. to the Reverend Donald D. Binder, PhD, presented in recognition of the many years of service to the Mount Vernon Ladies Association and the community of Powick Church.
Thank you, Doug.
Wow, what a whirlwind. Since I've been with the staff for only 3 months, my experience of Don is the shortest in length, but certainly not in breadth and depth. Apprentice to Don Daly, I've come to know that my first impression of him in an interview in March was spot on. I sense that he is a true shepherd. He knows about shepherding a healthy flock. It demands moderation, stability, and wisdom, all of which flows from intentional grounding in Christ's love through prayer and study of the Word. In this, we're kindred spirits, though very different in personality. I'm thankful that he has been a mentor to me and to many priests and many seminarians. I know I share that with all of you, as well as to the entire congregation. Now, Don, at the risk of sounding mawkish, I want to thank you and thank God for you for recognizing and naming the light that you saw in me and in each one of your staff members over the years. Tom and I are grateful that you called us here, very grateful. You've entrusted your beloved Pohick to us as you and Chris follow a clear call to the Holy Land. Again, that path will demand all your moderation, all your faithful stability, and all your wisdom. Meanwhile, back here, I'll try to learn the tambourine so I can join the Pohick Pickers. Can I call up the wonderful staff now? All of our staff members, please. And they have been here much, as I've said, much longer than I have. And so I'm honored to and humbled to be representing them. But together, we've put together a list of descriptors of Don. And so I'd like to ask Mike Morgan now to share that with all of you, from all of us. First, let's introduce us. I think you all know us. First, there's Susan Costa. You know Susan Costa, the Wonder Woman of the administration. And, of course, John and Frances Sessoms. Frances is the only one that Don didn't hire of all of us, but she's been just a solid as she can be, as you know, in Christian education. Rusty, who runs the cemetery and the youth group. How about that for a combination? It's awesome. And of course, you've already heard from Linda, and then I'll introduce Mike. Mike is going to share the list with you.
Well, you did hear that Don has hired each and every one of us except for Francis. Another interesting thing is, and every birthday he points this out, he is the youngest. Don.
Not anymore.
And he won't be too much longer. So who is Father Bender? Well, in one word, increments. Here we go. He's a rector. He's a chaplain, a minister, a father, a pastor, a servant, a clergyman, a preacher, a shepherd, a theologian, a saint, an apostle, an emissary, a disciple, a theist, a witness, a missionary, and most importantly, a child of God. He's also the boss, chief, head honcho, manager, supervisor, leader, shepherd, steward, mentor, administrator, most importantly, role model. He's also a writer, a scholar, a teacher, a wordsmith, a historian, a tutor, a counselor, a reader, but always a student also. He's an artist, a musician, a singer, a guitarist, a lyricist, a punster. Don, what's a dentist's favorite hymn?
Crowning with many crowns.
I knew you would know that. He's a confidant, a listener, sacrificial, empathizer, mediator, communicator, caregiver, and a sufferer. He's an IT technician, a plumber, a webmaster, electrician, a roofer. Maybe not much anymore, but he was. He's a fixer and repairer of things. And of course, he's a husband, a grandfather, a nephew, a father-in-law, a son, an uncle, and again, a father. But most importantly, he is, besides not getting any younger, a believer and a forever friend. Thank you, Don.
Many of you know, but some may not be aware, that Don recently created a new devotional liturgy for the Easter season. I want to read you just a brief description of that liturgy. From the foreword to the Way of Light. From the earliest days of Christianity, pilgrims have journeyed to Jerusalem to contemplate the path of Jesus' passion, death, and burial. Eventually, Christians meditated on written penitential devotions called Stations of the Cross, first penned by Franciscans in the 13th century. Also known as the Way of the Cross, these 14 meditations trace the original Via Dolorosa, the way of suffering of Jesus. Meditating on these stations, Christians were able to make a spiritual journey without traveling to the Holy Land. However, these Lenten devotions ended with placing Jesus in the tomb. In time, the Church created a complementary set of meditations called the Stations of Resurrection to reflect on the second part of the Paschal Mystery and continue through the 50 days of Easter. They convey a living understanding of these gospel events, and the Stations of Resurrection assist pilgrims in contemplating their own conversions beyond the suffering and the repentance to new life in Christ. Episcopal priest and author, the Reverend Donald D. Bender, Ph.D., has created and inspired new Stations of Resurrection called The Way of Light. Father Don introduced this hope-filled liturgy during Pohick Episcopal Church's annual retreat in Shrinemont in Virginia's Shenandoah Mountains. Subsequently, the Episcopal Diocese of Virginia approved and presented the Way of Light to the 79th General Convention of the Episcopal Church. In 2018, the General Convention enthusiastically approved the Way of Light liturgy for publication in the next revision of the Episcopal Church's Book of Occasional Services. That's a supplement to our Book of Common Prayer. Recently, Father Don accepted a call to be a chaplain to the Most Reverend Suhail Delwani, Archbishop of Jerusalem, as we know, in appreciation for Don's 17-year ministry as Pohick's rector, in celebration of his call to the Holy Land, and in joyful appreciation of his liturgical achievement. The Pohick staff has designed and bound the Way of Light into a booklet published for both congregational and private devotional use. We enlisted gifted Pohick artists Victoria Albert and Jackie Wells, mama-daughter team, to illustrate each station. We will ship the first half of this run of booklets to Father Don. You do not have to carry that on the plane and use up your 50 pounds. We'll ship it to you so you can use it at St. George's. And we'll be using it, the other half, here at Easter time. And so we will never forget. Don's ministry clearly flows from his groundedness in the Lord. And I would just say that it reminds all of us of what Karl Rahner once said about the life of a priest. This is the life of the priest, to dwell completely in the explicit nearness of God. We know when you go to Jerusalem, you certainly will be. Even as you do here in the parish, you have dwelt in the explicit presence of God right here among all your people. And you continue to be here with us. Don, the staff, and I thank you for guiding your flock through the discovery of the light within us, all of us. Pohick will miss you and Chris, and we'll continue to pray for your authentic Christian witness and your safety in the Holy Land. So, I'm going to hand one to Don right now. One of these. Yes, the staff and the artists have all sort of, it's like a yearbook. We've all written ditties in here for him, so messages for him. So this is your special one, but you have lots coming, others. And I'm going to pass around, we're going to pass around, Jackie and I, some of these, just so y'all can see what we're talking about. There are 3 of them I'm just going to pass around for you. That's we're so proud of you, Don, and Chris, we know you're going to do a wonderful job there and do an amazing, amazing work of peace in a war-torn country.
Since we're going to be joined at the hip for the next 3 years, I'd ask my dear wife to come up and join me here. You're not going to say anything. What do you mean? You kind of. And as she does, I'd just like to thank all of you, Michelle, especially in the vestry, for throwing together this wonderful reception, for all of you being here. It's nice to see wonderful friends, Cindy Reithenbark up from Richmond, and Phil and Kelly Perconti up from down from Maryland. Yeah, you got to make your way over there, right? And many others here from across here. James Rickenbaker down up from Stafford, one of our seminarians. Many of you who we've had the privilege of knowing for all of these years. Thank you so much. As I was taking a break from the stage and the soundboard at the fair last week, and just sitting there and enjoying some conversation with friends over lunch, and just looking around this beautiful fair day we had last week and everything else, I just said to myself, Don, are you nuts? I'll have more to say about this tomorrow, but God really had to light up some fireworks for us to leave you all behind, and we are going to miss you all so very much. And we thank you for this wonderful journey. We will continue to have you in our prayers from Jerusalem. We know you will be praying for us, and that you will continue the good work that we've begun together and widen this circle more and more so that we can continue to spread the good news of Jesus Christ here at Bowick Church. God bless you all.
I've never used one of these before. Well, I was kind of said my piece the other night at the Martha Guild, but I was thinking about our time here, and I'll probably cry, so just, hold on. I wanted to thank you for three things. The first is how much you've supported my husband. He's been your priest, he's been your friend, he's been your confidant. You've shared your children, your education with him, you've come to his classes, you've listened to his sermons, you've let him be your shepherd and guide, you've turned to him for wisdom and hopefully good advice. Hope so. And you've respected his day off. You've certainly supported us monetarily. And you've just been really wonderful as a congregation. I have a lot of friends whose husbands are priests, and I really don't have any complaints about how you've treated my husband. And that's really quite extraordinary in this priest world. The second thing is how you've supported me. There are occasions I'm not your typical priest wife, I guess. I don't really know how to do some of the things that a lot of priest wives are really good at. But you've accepted who I am. And you've taken whatever gifts I could bring, and you shared that with me. You've come to the Bible studies. You've been my dear and sweet friend. You've prayed with me. And you've given me great hope when hope was rare for me. You helped me through difficulties with my children, through the deaths of both of my brothers, through my baby going off to college this year. You have been extraordinarily kind to me. And the last thing I want to thank you for is how you treated my children. You've nurtured them and fed them. You've shown them what being a Christian community is like. It's been amazing. I don't think they will have any other congregations to compare to. They'll always look to the Episcopal Church at Pohick as the way a church should be. You've educated them through a wonderful Sunday school program, mentored them, given some of them their first jobs. You've supported them left and right. You've prayed for them, and you've prayed over them. And I think that there's really, as a mom, there's really no more wonderful thing. I have a friend who told me the reason she educates her children in the way of the Lord is that if they ever walk away and make another choice in their life, at least they'll know what they're missing. And my children are that way. They know what it's supposed to be like. You know, they know that a church is a family that supports each other and loves each other through thick and thin, that they don't give up on each other, that they pray for each other, that they learn and study together, that they, may fuss once in a while, but they forgive each other and they go on from there. They stay in relationship because they feel God has placed them together. And that's how I feel, that even though we're going to be, I don't even know how many hundreds and thousands of miles away, this is my church. You're my people. You're my brothers and sisters, and mothers and fathers, children in the Lord. And as we pack up all our stuff, the best thing we take with us, we don't have to fit in a box or the 2 tiny little suitcases that we get to take. We take your love and your prayers and the history of our relationship. We take your examples as Christians. Because it's all right here and there's lots of room in there for everybody. We know that we leave a piece of ourselves here too. Just promise me you'll be as kind, as generous, as warm and funny and forgiving and devout and wise and wonderful as you were to us, to the next people that come, and to all the people that come into your life as your clergy family, spiritual mentor, however you want to categorize us. Thank you. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you.
Take this moment to get you to join me in thanking the members of the reception committee and other church groups who provided this very sumptuous and elegant reception. Michelle Bartholomew, Connie Myers, Beth Altman, myself, Helen Parker, Ann Dervis, Donna Crawford, Suzanne Leon, Carmen Cullen, and Suzanne Pearson. If I've missed anybody, my apologies, but this is the list I have. Flower Guild, Rita Stankwitz and Jackie Wells for arranging the flowers. Guilds doing the tables were as follows. The hors d'oeuvres tables were provided by the Martha Guild and Mason Guild, the Community of Hope, the Vestry, and the 20s and 30s group. The dessert table was provided by the choir and the Docent Guild. Beverages were provided by the Brotherhood. Wine and beer provided by Edwardine Pitcock, Judd Byerly, and Beth Alden. Let us pray.
Let us ask for God's blessing upon our brother Don and our sister Chris. Lord Jesus, Word made flesh, from the beginning of creation you named and claimed us for yourself. Look with kindness upon your servants, Don and Chris, who lead this community, marked by your cross, fed by your word, filled with our care, and sent to be your presence to all they meet. Guide them on the way, and bless them with your wisdom, that they may be a word of hope for a world desperately in need. We ask this through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.